The funeral of Charlie Kirk's supporters from across the country plan to attend, not only to honor Kirk's life, but to demonstrate the strength of the movement he helped build. Turning Point USA members, political leaders, conservative commentators, and ordinary Americans who admired his message are expected to fill the stadium. The sheer scale of the funeral underscores just how deeply Kirk's presence shaped conservative America. His loss is felt as both a personal tragedy for his followers and a symbolic moment in the ongoing cultural battles of the nation. Just days before his planned speaking tour was to continue, tragedy struck. Charlie Kirk was giving a talk at a university in Utah when he was murdered in front of an audience. The shocking incident stunned both supporters and critics. Details of the attack remain under investigation, but the immediate aftermath was filled with grief, anger, and political debate. Some conservatives pointed to a climate of hostility against right-wing figures, suggesting that heated political rhetoric had fueled the violence. Others argued that Kirk's own inflammatory language had made him a target. Regardless of the debate, one fact was undeniable. A young man who had become one of the most visible conservative voices in America was gone at just 31 years old. Reactions to Kirk's death have been as polarized as his career. Conservative outlets hailed him as a martyr for free speech and traditional values. They painted him as a young leader whose voice was silenced too soon. Progressive voices, however, were more complicated. While many condemned the violence and expressed sympathy for his family, they also highlighted the damage they believe his rhetoric caused. Editorials and opinion pieces pointed out that Kirk had often used his platform to attack vulnerable groups, suggesting that his legacy should be remembered with honesty rather than blind praise. Even major newspapers found themselves embroiled in controversy. When a Washington Post editor criticized Kirk's racial remarks online, she was later dismissed from the paper, sparking debates about free speech, journalism, and accountability. Charlie Kirk's story is not one that can be told in simple terms. To some, he was a courageous truth-teller, unafraid of political correctness, and willing to stand for values under attack. To others, he was a dangerous voice who legitimized prejudice and deepened America's divisions. What cannot be denied is his impact. By the time of his death, Kirk had built a massive following, shaped the political education of thousands of young conservatives, and forced the mainstream media to pay attention to issues often ignored. His ability to dominate conversations ensured that even those who despised him could not look away. Kirk's sudden death raises difficult questions for America. What role does political speech play in fueling violence? How should society respond to figures who are both loved and hated in equal measure? And what happens when a movement loses one of its most visible leaders? For his supporters, the answer is clear. The movement must continue. Turning Point USA and similar organizations have vowed to keep his vision alive, ensuring that the values Kirk fought for remain part of the national conversation. For his critics, his death is an opportunity to reflect on the dangers of inflammatory rhetoric and the responsibility that comes with a public platform. They argue that while free speech is vital, leaders must recognize the real-world consequences of their words. While Kirk was admired by many, he was also one of the most criticized political figures of his generation. His speeches and social media posts often drew backlash, particularly for remarks seen as racially charged or dismissive of minorities. At times, Kirk questioned whether affirmative action unfairly advantaged Black Americans. In one of his most widely circulated comments, he openly wondered whether Black professionals, from customer service workers to pilots, had earned their positions through merit or were hired because of diversity initiatives. Statements like these triggered outrage from civil rights activists and progressives, who accused him of spreading harmful stereotypes. Kirk also faced criticism for his remarks on immigration, transgender rights, and his embrace of replacement theory rhetoric, the idea that elites were attempting to replace white Americans with immigrants. Supporters argued that he was simply raising uncomfortable truths, while opponents warned that his words were fueling division and extremism. Despite the backlash, his influence only grew. Social media amplified his voice, and every controversial statement brought him more attention. For his base, Kirk became a hero, precisely because he wasn't afraid to say what others would not. Charlie Kirk's death marks the end of a short but powerful era in American politics. In just over a decade, He transformed from a student activist into a household name, influencing debates on campuses, television, and social media. His funeral will not just be a farewell to a man, but a symbolic gathering for a movement that sees itself embattled in the culture wars of modern America. Thousands will remember him as a fighter who stood for what they believed in. Others will remember him as a figure whose words divided communities and sparked outrage. Either way, his story is one of impact, a reminder that in today's America, a single voice can shape national conversations, ignite passions, and leave a legacy that will be debated long after death. Charlie Kirk's life was filled with passion, controversy, and conviction. His death ensures that his name will remain part of America's political story for years to come.